Imagine this. What if you could cut your biggest monthly expense? You know, the one that just eats up most of your paycheck down to almost zero.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even get rid of it. Or, get this, actually have that expense pay you.
Yeah, that sounds pretty out there, doesn't it?
It really does. Like something from a financial fantasy novel. But, well, apparently it's not fantasy. It's the provocative promise of something called house hacking.
And it is provocative, but it's also a strategy that, well, maybe a bit unconventional, offers a genuinely powerful way, sort of accelerated path towards financial independence and building real long-term wealth.
Right.
It completely flips the script on how most people think about housing.
Exactly. And well, that's what this deep dive is all about today. We're going to crack open this whole concept of house hacking. We're drawing on insights from the bookie summary of the house hacking strategy.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try and pull out the essential stuff, like what house hacking actually is, why it's considered such a potent strategy, the different kinds of properties that actually work for this.
Yeah. The crucial team members you really need, how to find and analyze the deals. The numbers part.
Super important.
Navigate that offer process, which can be, well, pretty stressful.
Yeah.
And then tackle the real practical stuff, like actually living with tenants.
Yeah, the day-to-day realities. Our mission here is really to distill the most important nuggets from this material. Yeah. We want to give you a really clear understanding so you can figure out if house hacking might be, a viable strategy for you. Cut through the noise, focus on the essentials, the steps, the numbers, and crucially, that unique mindset it takes to make it work.
Okay, let's dive right in then. At its core, what are we actually talking about when we say house hacking?
Well, the simplest definition, it's basically a real estate investment strategy, but it's wrapped up in your primary residence.
Okay.
So you buy a property, you live in part of it, and then you rent out the other part.
The goal, the main aim, is for the rental income you collect to cover your entire housing expense. We're talking mortgage payment, taxes, insurance, maybe even utilities sometimes.
Wow.
So you end up living for free, or at least dramatically reducing your cost of living.
Yeah.
And anything left over after that, that's pure cash flow.
Oh, so it's definitely not just finding a cheap place to live. It's more intentional, using the property itself as a tool, an income generator while you're there.
Exactly. And the why behind it is, I think, arguably even more important than the what. Think about it. For most Americans, housing is their single biggest monthly expense. Like, by far.
Yeah, no kidding.
So if you could just slash that or even eliminate that one massive outgoing, what does that do to your budget?
It changes everything.
It frees up a huge amount of capital. Capital that you can then intentionally save, invest, deploy to build wealth much, much faster than if you're just paying a regular mortgage or rent.
Right.
The source material really frames this beautifully in the context of achieving financial independence. You're building that long-term security through passive income streams and growing equity. House hacking hits both of those directly.
It sounds incredibly powerful, but it also sounds like it requires a pretty big lifestyle shift, doesn't it? At least at the start. The source talks about needing to embrace, a frugal lifestyle, comparing it to living on a college student's salary while earning a grown-up salary.
Yeah.
That contrast could be a real shock for people, especially if their income is going up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's definitely a psychological hurdle for a lot of people, and the source is very upfront about that. It acknowledges it can feel weird.
Yeah.
And your friends might be buying bigger houses, getting newer cars, taking fancy vacations, and you're choosing to live maybe in less space, perhaps with roommates, and being really conscious about every dollar.
Right.
But that intentional frugality, it's absolutely foundational, especially early on. By keeping your personal living costs super low, specifically because your housing is covered, you can achieve an incredibly high savings rate.
How high are we talking?
The book suggests potentially 70–80% of your income could go towards investments once that housing piece is handled.
Wow, 70–80%. That's huge.
It's like pouring rocket fuel on your journey to financial independence, That kind of savings rate makes a massive difference.
And it's like a built-in defense against lifestyle creep, that thing where you earn more, so you just automatically spend more.
Absolutely. Lifestyle creep is so insidious, right? You get a raise, you upgrade the car, bigger apartment, whatever, and your savings rate just kind of stays flat or maybe even drops. House hacking forces you to consciously question those automatic upgrades. You're actively choosing to maintain a lower cost of living, which means your savings rate can just soar as your income increases. It really reinforces that powerful quote the source uses. It's much better to be rich than to look rich.
That's a good one.
You're prioritizing building actual real wealth over just, outward appearances.
Is the why, the motivation, purely financial, though?
Well, the source argues it shouldn't be, not ultimately. While the money side is obviously the engine driving this, your deeper motivation, your reason for wanting financial independence through house hacking,
Yeah.
that should probably be non-monetary.
Okay. Like what?
It needs to connect to your core purpose.
Yeah.
Why do you want that freedom in the first place? Is it spending more time with family, traveling, pursuing some passion project, starting a business?
Right. The what for?
Exactly. The money is just the tool to enable that duper life purpose. And keeping that ultimate why front and center can really help you stay disciplined when, inevitably, challenges pop up.
Yeah, that makes sense. It reminds me of that Dave Ramsey line, live like no one else so you can live like no one else.
That quote is just spot on for the house hacker mindset, isn't it?
It really is.
You're choosing, as the source puts it, an alternate road. Most people just follow the standard path, rent or buy, and housing is purely an expense, usually the biggest one. House hacking is deliberately choosing a different path. The book even calls it the fast lane toward financial independence. You're proactively building an asset that cuts your expenses and generates income, instead of just passively carrying a huge liability.
And part of what makes it a fast lane is that push towards passive income, right?
Yes, definitely. The source touches on this by mentioning the idea of like an infinite dollar wage, basically, making money with 0 hours of active work.
The dream.
Well, yeah. And while house hacking isn't completely passive, you still have to manage tenants, deal with leaky faucets,
Right, there's work involved.
There is. But it's a very tangible step in that direction. The rental income you get is generated by the asset itself, not directly tied hour for hour to your time. So every dollar of passive income you build reduces your reliance on trading time for money, moving you closer to that state of financial freedom.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy, the mindset shift. Now, let's get practical. The source mentions that house hacking kind of limits your property options compared to, say, traditional investing. Uses a pretty funny analogy for this.
It does, yeah. It says looking for traditional investment properties is like going to a cheesecake factory, with that ridiculously long menu, just endless options.
Yeah, I know that menu.
Right. But finding a property that works for house hacking, that's more like going to your local family diner. The menu's much shorter, much more focused.
Okay.
Because you're looking for properties you can both live in and generate rental income from, and that naturally narrows down the choices.
So what kind of properties typically show up on that family diner menu for house hackers? What are the main types?
The source really focuses on 3 main categories.
Okay.
First, single-family residences, or SFRs. This is often the most common starting point, especially for a first house hack.
Like a regular house.
Exactly. You buy a standard house, and then you rent out the individual bedrooms. The upfront capital needed can sometimes be lower than for a multi-unit, and the financing might feel a bit more familiar to people.
Makes sense.
The key challenge here, though, and it's a big one to consider, is that you are literally living with your tenants, sharing kitchens, living rooms, bathrooms.
Yeah, that requires a certain personality, maybe?
It definitely requires very careful tenant screening and setting crystal clear expectations from day one.
Okay, what's the second type?
Small, multifamily properties.
More.
This is your duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. So 2, 3, or 4 separate units, all on one property deed.
Oh,
you live in one unit and you rent out the other 1, 2, or 3 units. This strategy is often seen as like the gold standard for house hacking cash flow.
Why is that?
Because you've got multiple separate income streams under one roof.
Yeah.
And tenants usually have their own entrances, their own living spaces, which can make the landlord-tenant dynamic feel a bit more distinct than renting rooms in your own house.
Right, more separation.
Exactly. Now, the source does note that sometimes small multis might see a bit less natural appreciation compared to single-family homes in the same area. But that's not a hard and fast rule. It really depends on the local market.
Gotcha. And the third type?
Townhomes or condominiums. These can be more affordable ways to get started, especially if you're looking in like desirable urban or suburban spots where standalone houses are really pricey.
Okay.
They often come with lower exterior maintenance responsibilities because the HOA, the homeowners association, usually handles things like roofing, siding, landscaping.
But then you have HOA fees.
Exactly. That's the main downside. Those HOA fees are an extra monthly expense you absolutely have to factor into your numbers. Plus, townhomes and condos often have smaller living spaces, which might limit how many rooms you can rent out or the type of tenant you attract, potentially impacting your rental income compared to a larger property.
Choosing the right neighborhood for one of these seems like a real balancing act, like where you want to live versus where the numbers actually make sense for hacking.
It absolutely is. You have to weigh your personal preferences, commute time, being close to friends or family, safety, parks, shops, all that stuff. But you must combine that gut feel with solid data analysis. Websites like Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, they're not just for browsing pretty pictures.
Right.
They're powerful tools for gathering data. Look up recent comparable sales. What did similar properties sell for? Check property tax history. And crucially for house hacking, find out what comparative rental rates are for similar units or rooms in that specific neighborhood.
And things like school ratings.
School ratings can be a good indicator of neighborhood desirability. That can impact tenant demand and maybe your future appreciation potential too. It's all part of the puzzle.
And I guess it probably means making compromises you wouldn't make if you were just buying a place for yourself.
Oh, definitely. The source really hammers this point home. It's a mindset shift. When you're house hacking, that property is first and foremost a financial tool, an investment. So you might have to compromise on some cosmetic stuff. Maybe the kitchen isn't perfectly updated, the layout isn't your absolute dream, maybe it's a block or two further from where you ideally want it to be.
Right.
You might trade some of those wants for a property that works financially, one that has strong cash flow potential. You can always upgrade the kitchen or paint the walls later. You can't easily fix bad numbers.
Good point. Prioritize the financials.
Absolutely. Prioritizing that financial viability and making sure you can comfortably manage the mortgage payment is key.
Okay, so let's say you've got an idea of the property types, the areas. Now you need to build a team. The source says a reliable team is vital, but maybe not as big as people think. Who are the essential players?
Yeah, the source kind of debunks the myth that you need this huge army of people right from the start. You need a few key players, and the most critical one, like the absolute first person you should talk to, a reliable lender.
Okay, why start with the lender before even finding a property?
Because they hold the keys to the kingdom, basically. They determine what you can actually afford and what types of properties you can even qualify for financing on.
Ah, okay.
Your lender is going to evaluate you based on specific criteria, your credit score, your debt-to-income ratio, DTI, and how much cash you have for a down payment and closing costs. Understanding those criteria before you start seriously looking saves you a ton of time and helps you set realistic expectations. It focuses your search.
Okay, let's break those down. Credit score, what's the target range?
Well, the source suggests aiming for at least a 620 for a conventional loan. That's kind of a common baseline.
620.
If your score is lower, say down around 580, an FHA loan might still be an option, but the terms will be different, maybe a higher interest rate or more fees.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, though, the higher your credit score, the better the interest rate and terms you'll likely get.
Makes sense. And DTI, debt-to-income ratio, how do they figure that out and what are the typical limits?
Right, DTI measures your ability to handle your monthly debt payments relative to your income. Lenders calculate it by taking all your recurring monthly debt payments, think student loans, car payments, minimum credit card payments, and importantly, the estimated new monthly housing payment for the property you want to buy. That includes principal, interest, property taxes, and homeowners insurance, often called PITI.
PITI, got it.
They sum all those monthly debts up, and then they divide that total by your gross monthly income. That's your income before taxes or any deductions.
Okay, so debts divided by pre-tax income.
Exactly. Yep. So if your total monthly debts, including the estimated PITI, add up to $2,000 and your gross monthly income is $5,000, your DPI is 40%. $2,000 to $5,000.
And what DTI do lenders like to see?
It varies a bit by lender and loan program, but often they look for DTI ratios somewhere below 43% or maybe 45%. Some programs might allow slightly higher, but lower is generally better.
And for house hacking specifically, you're usually aiming for owner-occupied loans, right? What's the advantage there?
Yes. Owner-occupied loans are really the foundation of house hacking in the U.S. These are loans you get when you declare you're going to live in the property as your primary residence, usually for at least the first year. Because you'll be living there, lenders see you as less risky than someone buying a pure investment property they'll never set foot in.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that reduced risk translates into much more favorable loan terms for you. Think lower interest rates, significantly lower down payment requirements, and sometimes more flexible qualification rules compared to straight investment loans. These owner-occupied loans are often backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which helps keep them standardized and affordable, assuming you meet the credit and DPI requirements, of course.
So what are the specific types of these owner-occupied loans that are popular for house hackers?
The source highlights a few key ones that are really common.
Okay.
First, conventional loans. These are your standard mortgages. Now, traditionally, people think 20% down to avoid PMI, but for owner-occupied properties, you can often get a conventional loan with as little as 5% down for a single-family home.
Only 5%.
Yeah. Now, for small multi-unit properties like a duplex up to a fourplex where you'll live in one unit, the owner-occupied conventional down payment might be a bit higher, maybe 10% or 15%, but that's still way lower than the 20-25% typically needed if you were buying it purely as an investment. The catch with putting less than 20% down, though, is you'll likely pay PMI, private mortgage insurance.
We'll come back to PMI. What's next?
FHA loans. These are insured by the government, the Federal Housing Administration. They're fantastic for first-time buyers or people with maybe slightly lower credit scores. The big standout feature, the down payment requirement is just 3.5%.
Wow, 3.5%. That really lowers the barrier to entry.
It makes it incredibly accessible. The trade-off with FHA, though, is you have to pay mortgage insurance premium, or MIP. There's usually an upfront premium and then an annual premium paid monthly. And often if you put down less than 10%, that MIP sticks around for the life of the loan. So you absolutely have to factor that cost in. But for many people, that low 3.5% down payment is what makes the deal possible at all.
Okay. And the third one?
VA loans. These are an absolutely incredible benefit if you're an eligible U.S. veteran or currently serving in the military. VA loans often allow for zero down payment. And typically, no ongoing private mortgage insurance either. That makes them extremely powerful for getting into a property with very little cash out of pocket.
Zero down, no PMI. Yeah, that's huge. So knowing about these different loan types is like having a toolbox, you said.
Exactly. The source uses that great analogy. If your financial toolbox only has one tool in it, like I must put 20% down for a conventional loan, you're seriously limiting yourself. Many great house hacking deals, especially when you're starting out, might work best with a low down payment FHA loan. Or maybe the property needs some repairs that fit better with certain loan types. Knowing about these different tools, conventional, FHA, VA, dramatically expands the number of potential deals you can actually pursue and successfully close on. Being stuck with just one option makes finding that first deal much, much harder.
Okay, let's circle back to that PMI or MIP for the lower down payment options. It's an extra cost, you mentioned. Is it always bad?
It is an extra cost, yes. And you absolutely must include it in your calculations when you're analyzing a deal. PMI on conventional loans, MIP on FHA loans, they protect the lender. If you default, they don't protect you.
Right.
However, the source takes a very pragmatic view. If, even with that PMI or MIP cost added into your monthly payment, your projected rental income still allows you to cash flow.
Meaning the rent covers all the costs, including the mortgage insurance.
Exactly. If the rent covers PITI plus the PMP, plus your other operating costs, and you still meet your profitability goal, then the deal might still be absolutely worth pursuing.
Okay.
The goal is to get started building wealth.
Very.
And sometimes paying that mortgage insurance temporarily is the key that unlocks the door. It lets you get in the game sooner and start benefiting from the passive income and the equity building up as you pay down the loan and the property potentially appreciates. Plus, with conventional loans, once you hit 20% equity, you can usually request to have the PMI removed, which is a nice bonus down the road.
So beyond checking out your personal finances credit, DTI, down payment, what else do lenders really scrutinize?
Oh, they look very closely at the property itself. They need to make sure it's actually habitable, that it meets basic safety standards. They're not going to approve an owner-occupied loan on a place that's falling down.
Makes sense.
And critically, they require an appraisal. They hire a neutral third-party appraiser to go out and evaluate the property. Their job is to determine its fair market value based on recent sales of comparable properties nearby.
And why is that appraisal value so important?
Because the lender will typically only loan you a certain percentage based on your down payment of the appraised value or the purchase price, whichever is lower.
Ah, okay.
So if you offer $300,000 for a house, but the appraisal only comes back at $290,000, the lender's only going to base their loan on that $290,000 value. That creates a gap. And it's something you'd have to figure out, usually by negotiating with the seller or bringing more cash to closing. We'll touch on that more when we talk offers.
Gotcha. So how should someone prepare before they even start talking to lenders to make a good impression?
Yeah, do your homework first. It makes a huge difference. Gather up all your financial documents, get a clear idea of your credit score. You can get free estimates from various places online. Make a list of all your monthly debts, student loans, car payments, credit cards, everything. Pull together proof of your income. Recent pay stubs are key, maybe your last couple of years of tax returns if you're self-employed or have variable income. And document where your down payment and closing cost money is coming from, bank statements, investment account statements, etc.
So show up organized.
Exactly. Walking in organized signals to the lender that you're serious, you're prepared, you respect their time. It can really help streamline that pre-approval process.
Are there any other financing routes besides traditional banks or mortgage brokers? Anything alternative?
Well, the source does mention seller financing as a possibility. It's definitely less common for the types of owner-occupied deals you usually find listed on the open market, like on the MLS.
Right.
But sometimes you might uncover these opportunities through networking, or maybe by contacting owners of distressed properties directly, like through that driving for dollars method we might talk about later.
So what is seller financing?
It's basically where the seller of the property acts as the bank. Instead of you getting a loan from Wells Fargo, the seller carries the loan themselves, and you make payments directly to them based on terms you negotiate.
Interesting. When would that be useful?
It could be useful in specific situations. Maybe if you have a lower credit score that makes traditional financing tough, or if the property itself has issues that make it hard to qualify for a standard loan. But it involves direct, often complex, negotiation with the seller on interest rates, payment schedules, loan duration. It requires a different skill set than just applying for a bank loan.
Okay. And just getting pre-approved isn't the end of communicating with your lender.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, communication becomes even more crucial once you actually get an offer accepted and you're under contract on a specific property.
How so?
You need to be super responsive. The lender's underwriting team will likely ask for updated documents, explanations for certain bank deposits, things like that. You need to provide whatever they request promptly. Keeping them in the loop about inspection results, the appraisal timeline, it all helps their team work efficiently. Good communication dramatically increases the chances of a smooth closing that happens on time, within your contract deadlines.
All right, so step one, find a great lender, get pre-approved. Who else is absolutely essential on this initial house hacking team?
A knowledgeable real estate agent is really the next key player. Their main job is to help you find suitable properties, understand the local market dynamics, and then guide you through the whole transaction process, from making the offer all the way to getting the keys at closing.
Now, should you look for anything specific in an agent if you're planning to house hack? Does any agent work?
This is actually pretty important. You don't just want any agent. Ideally, you want someone who really understands house hacking specifically, or at least has solid experience working with investors, especially on small multifamily properties.
Why the specialization?
Because a traditional agent, who mostly helps families find their dream single-family home, might not really understand how to analyze a property's cash flow potential. They might not be familiar with the nuances of owner-occupied multi-unit financing, or the specific features and potential pitfalls that a house hacker needs to look out for. You want someone who gets the strategy, who can look at properties through that investment lens with you.
Okay, that makes sense. And a good agent gets you access to the MLS, the multiple listing service.
Yes, the MLS is their primary tool, and it's absolutely crucial for you as a buyer. It's this huge, comprehensive database where licensed agents list properties for sale. While public websites like Zillow pull data from the MLS itself is often the most up-to-date and complete source, sometimes showing listings slightly before they hit the public sites.
Right.
Your agent uses the MLS to filter and find properties that match your specific criteria: number of units, location, price range, square footage, whatever you've defined. Leveraging the MLS effectively through a knowledgeable agent is fundamental to finding potential deals, especially those listed publicly.
And you mentioned earlier, you need to be ready to move fast sometimes.
Definitely. The source points this out. Desirable properties, especially ones that look like good house hacks with strong cash flow potential, can get snapped up very quickly, particularly in hot markets.
So no time for dithering.
Pretty much. Once you've identified a promising property and run your initial numbers, and it looks good, you need to be prepared to work with your agent to put together a solid offer in a timely manner. Waiting too long often means losing out to another buyer.
Okay, what about a contractor? Is that someone you need on the team right away?
Not always, no. It really depends on the condition of the property you end up buying. If you find a place that's pretty much move-in ready and doesn't need immediate work to start renting out spaces, you might not need a contractor up front.
But if it needs work?
But if the property requires renovations, maybe to make it legally rentable, to add bedrooms or units to maximize income, or just needs significant repairs, then yes, a reliable contractor becomes an absolutely vital team member.
And how do you find a good one?
The source advises a thorough vetting process, which is smart. Check their experience. Have they worked on similar projects before, like rental properties or multi-units? Are they properly licensed and insured in your area? That's huge.
Right. Insurance is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can they pull the necessary permits for the work? You don't want unpermitted work causing problems later. Ask for references from previous clients and actually call them. Get detailed written quotes outlining the scope of work and costs. And try to get a feel for their reliability. Do they stick to timelines? That's important for getting your rental units generating income quickly.
Okay, so team assembled. Lender, agent, maybe a contractor on standby. You're ready to actually find and analyze deals. The source kicks off this section with a kind of funny metaphor about hoping versus acting, using a lottery story.
Yeah, it's a simple but really powerful reminder, isn't it? You can sit around hoping and praying for financial freedom or for that perfect house hack deal to just fall into your lap. But if you're not actively doing the work, actually searching for properties, running the numbers diligently, talking to lenders and agents, making offers well, it's just not going to happen. The story of the guy praying constantly to win the lottery, and finally God tells him, you have to at least buy a ticket. It perfectly illustrates that point. Hope is not a strategy. Proactive action is essential in real estate, maybe more than anything else.
So besides just browsing the MLS listings your agent sends you, are there other ways to hunt for potential deals?
Yeah, this source mentions one popular technique called driving for dollars.
Driving for dollars, what's that involve?
It's pretty literal. You physically drive or even walk around neighborhoods you're interested in, specifically looking for properties that show signs of neglect, vacancy, or some kind of distress.
Like what kind of signs?
Things like really overgrown yards, maybe boarded up windows, piles of mail overflowing the mailbox, maybe notices taped to the door, signs that the owner might not be actively maintaining the property, which could indicate they're motivated to sell.
Okay, so you spot a distressed property. Then what?
Then you try to find the owner's contact information, maybe through public records or skip tracing services, and reach out to them directly to see if they might be interested in selling, potentially off-market, before it ever hits the MLS.
Does that actually work?
The source claims this method can sometimes uncover hidden gems, off-market deals, and potentially yield a higher success rate for finding truly good deals compared to just relying on the MLS listings, where everyone else is looking too. But it definitely requires consistent effort and legwork.
Interesting. What about wholesalers? Are they a source for deals?
They can be, but the source advises approaching wholesalers with some caution, especially for a first house hack.
Why caution?
So wholesalers specialize in finding off-market properties, often distressed ones, getting them under contract at a very low price, and then immediately assigning that contract to an end buyer like you for a fee, their wholesale fee.
Okay, so they find the deal, you buy it from them, essentially.
Sort of. You're buying the contract from them. They can definitely uncover deals you wouldn't find otherwise. The potential issue is that wholesalers often prefer to work with cash buyers or buyers using hard money loans.
Why?
Because cash deals are faster, simpler, and have fewer contingencies, like financing and appraisal contingencies, which makes the deal more certain for the wholesaler.
And house hackers are usually using owner-occupied loans with those contingencies.
Exactly. Those FHA or low-down payment conventional loans often have stricter appraisal requirements and property condition standards that might not align with the distressed property a wholesaler has under contract. So if you do consider working with a wholesaler, you need to do extreme due diligence. Verify the numbers independently, get realistic repair estimates, make absolutely sure the price makes sense for you after factoring in repairs and their fee, and confirm with your lender that you can actually finance that specific property in its current condition. It adds layers of complexity.
Gotcha. So however you find the property, MLS, driving for dollars, maybe even a carefully vetted wholesale deal, the source really emphasizes that the absolute key to success is understanding and working the numbers.
Oh, yeah. Greg Kirlop, the author of the book, Summarize, is super clear on this. He basically says you don't need to be a math whiz, you don't need complex financial modeling software,
Yeah.
but you do need to get comfortable with the basic real estate math. You need to focus relentlessly on the key metrics that tell you whether a particular deal is potentially profitable as a house hack.
So what are those fundamental numbers you absolutely have to calculate for every potential property?
It really starts with figuring out your estimated total monthly housing payment. And the core of that is often summarized by the acronym PITI.
PITI, we mentioned that. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance.
Correct. Principal and interest, P&I, is your actual mortgage payment based on the loan amount, interest rate, and term. Taxes are the property taxes, usually paid monthly into an escrow account. Insurance is your homeowner's insurance premium, also usually escrowed.
Okay.
Now, critically, on top of PITI, if you're putting down less than 20% on a conventional loan, or if you're using an FHA loan, you must add in that PMI or MIT cost. That's part of your true monthly housing expense.
Right. Can't forget that.
Absolutely not. So your real monthly cost is PITI plus PMMIP. You need to get reasonably accurate estimates for all those pieces. Online mortgage calculators can estimate P&I. Your agent or lender can help estimate taxes and insurance based on the property and location. And you know your down payment percentage, which determines if you'll have PMAP and roughly how much it might be.
Okay, so you've estimated your total monthly housing cost. Then you compare that to the potential rental income.
Exactly. This is the heart of the analysis right here. The source really stresses that for house hacking, especially when you're starting, analysts should prioritize cash flow over appreciation.
Cash flow first?
Yes. Your immediate primary goal is to eliminate or drastically cut your own housing expense and ideally generate some positive passive income on top of that. So you need to realistically project the rental income you expect to receive from the rooms or the other units you plan to rent out.
How do you estimate that?
By researching comparable rentals in the immediate area. What are similar rooms or units actually renting for right now? Be conservative, don't overestimate. Then compare that total projected monthly rental income to your total estimated monthly housing payment, PITI plus PMIP.
And it needs to be higher than the payment.
Ideally, yes. But you also need to factor in other operating expenses. Things like potential vacancy. It's unrealistic to assume 100% occupancy forever. Reserves for repairs and maintenance. Maybe utilities if you plan to include them in the rent. Property management fees if you don't plan to self-manage, though most house hackers self-manage initially.
Okay, so rent minus PITI plus PMAP plus operating expenses creates cash flow.
That's the basic formula, yeah. And you need to ensure that final cash flow number meets whatever minimum profitability bar you set for yourself. Maybe you're aiming for $200 positive cash flow per month, maybe $500, maybe just breaking even zero cash flow is acceptable for your first deal if it means living for free. You define your target.
So you kind of set your own minimum cash flow goal for a deal to be worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. You decide what level of monthly profit, after all estimated expenses are accounted for, makes sense for you and makes the deal worth the effort and risk. And this highlights a really crucial mindset shift the source points out. The seller does not care that you cash flow each month. That is something you need to analyze and check for yourself.
Yeah, good point. They just want to sell their house.
Exactly. Their goal is to get their price and their terms. Your responsibility as the house hacker is to do the detailed, rigorous analysis to make damn sure that you can achieve your financial goals with that property at that price with those potential rents and expenses. Never, ever assume just because a property is listed for sale that it'll automatically work as a house hack. The analysis is entirely on you.
What about appreciation then? The property hopefully going up in value. Does that just not matter at all?
No, it definitely matters. Appreciation, the increase in the property's market value over time, is a huge component of long-term wealth building in real estate. The source even talks about the difference between natural appreciation, just the market going up, and forced appreciation, where you actively increase the value through smart renovations or adding rentable space.
Okay.
Appreciation absolutely contributes significantly to your overall net worth growth. However, the point is, for a house hack specifically, particularly your first one, cash flow is often prioritized because cash flow directly impacts your ability to live cheaply right now, save more money right now, and comfortably service debt month after month. A property that has amazing appreciation potential but bleeds cash every month, negative cash flow, is going to drain your bank account and cause stress, which kind of defeats one of the main purposes of house hacking, reducing your expenses.
So ideally you find both.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
The sweet spot is finding a property that offers both reasonable, predictable cash flow from day one and has decent potential for appreciation over the long term. But if you have to lean one way for your first house hack, the source suggests leaning towards prioritizing cash flow.
And you mentioned operating expenses like repairs and vacancy. You also mentioned reserves earlier. Are reserves like non-negotiable? Do you absolutely need cash set aside?
Absolutely, 100% non-negotiable.
Yeah.
The source is incredibly explicit about this. It is not recommended, it's actually dangerous to go into a house hack with zero cash reserve.
Why so critical?
Because stuff happens. Real estate ownership inevitably comes with unexpected expenses. The water heater dies. A tenant moves out unexpectedly, leaving you with a month or two of vacancy before you can re-rent. A hailstorm damages the roof.
Yeah, Murphy's Law.
Exactly. If you don't have a dedicated cash reserve fund set aside specifically to cover these kinds of things, a single unexpected repair bill or vacancy period can completely wipe out your cash flow for months, put you in serious financial distress, force you to dip into personal emergency savings, if you even have them, or worse, go into credit card debt to cover it.
So how much reserve is recommended?
There are different rules of thumb. Some say 3-6 months of your total operating expenses,
Right.
PITI plus PME plus other costs. Others suggest a flat percentage of the property value per year, like 1% allocated for maintenance. The exact amount depends on the property's age and condition. But the crucial thing is having a reserve fund established from day one and consistently contributing to it. It protects your investment and your sanity.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there like one single metric that kind of captures the overall picture of how the investment is doing beyond just the monthly cash flow?
Yeah, the source introduces a really useful metric called net worth return on investment, or NWROI.
NWROI.
Okay, this metric is powerful because it looks beyond just the cash hitting your bank account each month. It tries to capture all the ways real estate builds your wealth.
So what does it include?
NWROI typically incorporates your annual cash flow, yes, but it also adds in the estimated increase in the property's value for that year, appreciation, and the amount of your mortgage principal that you paid down during the year. That's the loan paydown or amortization.
Ah, because paying down the loan increases your equity.
Exactly. So NWROI, cash flow plus appreciation plus loan paydown, your initial cash investment. It gives you a much more holistic percentage return, showing how the property is contributing to your overall net worth growth over time. It's a great way to compare different potential deals on a broader level.
That's really helpful. And it's important to think longer term, too. What if you decide you want to move out of the house hack eventually?
That's a fantastic point. And the source definitely advises analyzing the property with that potential future scenario in mind.
How so?
Before you even buy, run the numbers, assuming you move out and rent out the unit you were living in as well. Would the total rental income from the entire property, all units or all rooms in an SFR, still cover the full PITI, PMI life if applicable, and operating expenses, and hopefully still generate positive cash flow?
So does it work as a pure rental property later?
Precisely. Ensuring the property have that potential gives you tremendous flexibility down the line. If it cash flows well even when you're not living there, it can become a fantastic traditional investment property, continuing to build wealth and passive income for you long after you've moved on. Or if it doesn't quite cash flow well on its own, that might influence your decision on whether to sell it when you move versus keeping it. Analyzing that exit strategy up front is smart.
Wow, this analysis part sounds like a lot, especially for a beginner. How can someone get started practicing this without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, it can seem daunting at first, for sure.
Yeah.
But the action steps recommended are actually very practical and focus on building confidence through repetition.
Like what?
Start by just practicing. Go online to Zillow, Craigslist, Rentometer, whatever, in neighborhoods you're potentially interested in. Research what comparable rooms or units are actually renting for right now. Get a feel for the market rents.
Okay, research rents.
Then pull up actual property listings, either from MLS Access if you have an agent, or just from public sites like Redfin or Zillow. Take the list price. Use an online mortgage calculator to estimate the monthly PITI payment based on that price, assuming a certain down payment, like 5% or 3.5%, and current interest rates.
Okay.
Add in an estimate for PMI or MIP if it applies. Add a buffer for operating expenses, maybe 5-10% of the rent for vacancy, another 5-10% for maintenance. Now, compare that total estimated monthly cost to the realistic rental income you researched earlier.
And see if it hits your cash flow goal.
Exactly.
Okay.
Does it meet your defined profitability bar? Does it look like it would cash flow? Or is it way off? Do this analysis for multiple properties, even ones you have no intention of actually buying right now. Just practice the process over and over. Each time you do it, you'll get faster, more confident, and you'll start developing a better feel for what makes a potentially good deal versus a bad one in your market.
Okay, practice makes perfect, or at least proficient. So let's say you've done your homework, you've analyzed a property, and it looks good on paper, the numbers seem to work. Now comes the offer. The source says crafting the offer is more than just math.
Yeah, it uses this really evocative analogy. It says, making an offer is like a large math problem nestled into a fine painting that must attract the seller.
Huh. I like that. A math problem in a painting.
Right. So yes, the math, especially the purchase price, is absolutely critical. That price has the single biggest impact on your monthly payment, which then affects your cash flow, your equity, your loan pay down, all those wealth generators. But an offer isn't just a price. It also includes terms, contingencies, like for inspection and appraisal, closing timelines. And that's the painting part. You need the numbers to work for you, but you also need the overall offer package to appeal to the seller's specific situation and motivations.
Like what kind of motivations?
Maybe they need to sell really quickly because they're relocating. Maybe they need extra time after closing to find their next place, so they want to rent back from you for a month. Understanding their needs, if possible, can help your agent craft an offer that, even if it's not the absolute highest price, might be the most attractive one to them overall because it solves their problems.
And that purchase price itself, you said it's the most significant variable.
It really is. Every dollar lower you can negotiate on the purchase price directly translates into a lower loan amount. That means a lower monthly principal and interest payment for the entire life of the loan. And that lower payment improves your cash flow from day one. It means you start with more equity relative to the market value, assuming you buy below market. It just positively impacts everything down the line. So getting that purchase price right, balancing what the market dictates with what works for your house hacking numbers is absolutely fundamental.
And the source suggests you can get creative with the other terms in the offer. It's not just fill in the blanks.
Pretty much. It says anything goes, within legal limits, of course. You and your agent can craft specific clauses or terms tailored to the situation. Maybe you offer a slightly shorter or longer closing period than standard if that helps the seller. Maybe you ask for a seller credit towards your closing cost to reduce your cash needed up front. Maybe you include a specific contingency related to confirming rental licenses or zoning. Creativity, guided by a good agent, can definitely make your offer stand out from the competition.
Now, here's a key point the source seemed to make. Just because your lender pre-approved you for, say, $400,000 doesn't mean you should offer $400,000 on a property, right?
Oh, absolutely critical point. Your pre-approval amount is simply the maximum amount the lender thinks they might be willing to lend you based on a snapshot of your income and debts. It has absolutely nothing to do with whether any specific property is a good investment or will actually work as a profitable house hack for you.
Okay.
You must perform your own detailed cash flow analysis on each individual property you consider making an offer on. A property listed at $300,000 might be a phenomenal house hack that cash flows beautifully. Another property listed lower, say $250,000, might actually be a terrible deal with negative cash flow, even though you're approved for way more. The deal analysis is completely independent of your maximum borrowing power. Never offer more just because you can. Offer based on what makes sense for the investment.
Got it. Analyze the deal, not your loan limit. Now, the whole process from making an offer to actually closing, the source warns it can be an emotional roller coaster.
It absolutely is, and it's good that they're honest about that. It says you'll likely feel a roller coaster of emotions. Happy, nervous, excited, confused, lost, sick, you name it.
Yeah, sounds about right for a big decision.
It's a huge financial commitment, and there are so many moving parts. Negotiations, deadlines, inspections, appraisals, lender communications. It can be intense. But the key reassurance is, don't worry, this is totally normal. Expecting those feelings, knowing they're part of the process, can actually help you manage them better when they inevitably pop up.
Okay, so your offer gets accepted. Woohoo! You're officially under contract. What are the immediate next steps? What happens first?
First thing the source says is grab that accepted contract and mark all the important deadline dates clearly in your calendar, like right away.
Deadlines for what?
There are usually specific timeframes written into the contract for things like completing your home inspection, getting the appraisal done, securing your final loan commitment from the lender, things like that. Missing one of these deadlines could potentially put your earnest money deposit at risk or even kill the deal entirely. So track those dates religiously.
Okay, deadlines marked. What's action step number 2?
Immediately start contacting home inspectors. Don't just call one. Call several reputable inspectors in your area to check their availability and pricing and get one scheduled ASAP. You usually only have a short window, maybe 7, 14 days, to get the inspection done according to the contract.
And why is that home inspection so crucial?
The inspection is your opportunity to have a qualified professional give the property a thorough checkup, looking for issues you probably wouldn't notice yourself during a quick walkthrough.
What kind of issues?
They'll examine the structure, the roof condition, the plumbing system, the electrical panel and wiring, the heating and cooling, HVAC systems. Look for signs of water damage or pests. Basically, identify any existing problems or things that might need significant repair soon.
And the report they give you is important.
Hugely important. That detailed inspection report is not just for your information, it's a critical negotiation tool. Based on what the inspector finds, you and your agent can go back to the seller and request they make specific repairs before closing. Or, more commonly, you might ask for a credit at closing, basically a price reduction, so you can handle the repairs yourself after you own the property. And if the inspection reveals major, unexpected problems that you're not comfortable taking on, the inspection contingency in your contract usually gives you the right to walk away from the deal and get your deposit back.
Okay, so inspection contingency is key. Then comes the appraisal, which we touched on earlier when talking about lenders.
Right. Once you're under contract, your lender will formally order the appraisal. Remember, this is where an independent third-party appraiser comes out to determine the property's fair market value. They're working for the lender, essentially, to make sure the property is worth at least what you've agreed to pay for it, protecting the lender's investment.
And what happens if the appraisal comes in lower than the agreed-upon purchase price?
Yeah, that's the scenario you hope to avoid, but it happens. If the appraisal value comes in below your contract price, it creates an appraisal gap. Since the lender will typically only loan based on the lower of the purchase price or the appraised value, that gap needs to be bridged.
Oh.
Usually it triggers another round of negotiations. Your agent might try to negotiate with the seller to lower the purchase price to match the appraised value, or the seller might refuse. In that case, you, the buyer, would have to decide if you're willing and able to bring extra cash to closing to cover the difference between the appraised value and the contract price. If neither party can agree or bridge the gap and your contract has an appraisal contingency, you might be able to walk away from the deal. It's a common hurdle that needs careful handling.
Okay. And then, assuming inspection and appraisal go okay, you reach the closing date.
Exactly. The closing date is the finish line. That's the day ownership officially transfers from the seller to you. You sign a mountain of paperwork, pay your remaining down payment and closing costs, the lender funds the loan, and you get the keys.
Does the closing date matter much?
The date itself needs to be mutually agreed upon in the contract, considering the seller's timeline for moving out. But critically, you need to ensure the date allows enough time for your lender to complete their full underwriting process after the inspection and appraisal results are in. Sometimes buyers try to push for a super fast closing, but that can put immense pressure on the lender and potentially lead to delays or issues with getting your final loan approval. Keeping those lines of communication wide open with your lender throughout the entire under contract period is absolutely vital for hitting that closing date smoothly.
Okay, so you've navigated the offer, the inspections, the appraisal, the loan, you've closed, you own the property, congratulations. Now comes the reality of actually living there and managing tenants. Let's start with finding those tenants. The source puts a huge emphasis on understanding fair housing laws first.
Oh, absolutely non-negotiable. This is critical stuff you need to understand before you even think about writing a rental ad. Fair housing laws in the U.S. are federal laws that protect people from discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, which increasingly includes gender identity and sexual orientation in many interpretations and local laws, national origin, disability, and familial status, having kids.
Okay.
And many states and even cities add their own protected classes on top of that. Ignorance of these laws is absolutely not an excuse, and violations can lead to very serious lawsuits and penalties.
So practically, what does that mean when you're advertising a room or a unit for rent?
The key takeaway from the source here is, in your ads, describe the property and the community, focus on the features and location. Do not describe the type of person you want to live there or think would be a good fit.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Avoid saying things like, perfect for a quiet female student, or seeking young professional couple, or no kids preferred. Those phrases could easily be seen as discriminatory based on sex, familial status, or age, which is sometimes a protected class locally.
So what should you say?
Instead, focus on factual descriptions. Spacious room for rent in shared 3-bedroom house, private entrance basement apartment, includes shared kitchen access, Close to public transportation and parks. Quiet residential street. Describe the place, not the person.
Got it. Describe the property, not the tenant. So once you understand the legal side, what makes for an effective rental ad that actually attracts good applicants?
Be clear, be honest, and make it appealing. Write a detailed description that really highlights the positive features of the specific space you're renting out. And be clear about any shared amenities or house rules if it's a shared living situation.
And photos.
Oh, photos are huge. Use lots of high-quality pictures. Make sure they're bright, clear, and show the space accurately. Good photos make a massive difference in getting people interested enough to inquire. And be honest, if there are quirks or specific rules, like no pets or quiet hours, mention them up front in the ad or your initial communication. You want to attract tenants who are a good fit and understand what they're signing up for.
So you get applicants. Now comes the screening process. The source says meticulous screening is the absolute key to avoiding headaches later.
It really, really is. Probably the single most critical step in being a successful landlord, especially a house hacking landlord where you might be living close by or even sharing space. A bad tenant can cost you thousands lost rent, damages to the property, potential eviction costs, and legal fees.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare you want to avoid at all costs.
So what does meticulous screening involve? What are the steps?
The source outlines a pretty clear, standard process. First, require every adult applicant to fill out a formal rental application form. This collects their basic information, employment history, income, rental history, and references.
Okay, application form.
Second, with the applicant's explicit written permission, which should be part of the application, you run background checks and credit checks. Background checks look for relevant criminal history. Credit checks show their history of paying bills, their debt levels, and give you a score indicating their financial responsibility.
What else?
Third, verify their income. You need proof they can actually afford the rent. Ask for recent pay stubs, maybe bank statements or tax returns if they're self-employed. A common guideline is that their gross monthly income should be at least 3 times the monthly rent, but you should set your own consistent standard.
Income verification check.
And finally, and this is super important, always contact their previous landlords for references. Don't just ask, were they a good tenant? Ask specific questions. Did they pay rent on time? Did they take good care of the property? Were there any complaints? Did they give proper notice? And the killer question, would you rent to them again?
Wow, okay. That's thorough. So you collect all this info, application, credit, background, income proof, references. How do you actually make the final decision on who to approve?
You carefully compare all the information you've gathered for each applicant against the criteria you set before you started advertising. Look for inconsistencies. Does the income on the application match the pay stubs? Does the landlord reference contradict what they told you?
Look for red flags.
Exactly. Be mindful of any red flags that might have popped up during your initial phone calls or emails with them or during the showing. Did they seem evasive? Disrespectful? But the absolute most important thing, be completely consistent. Apply the exact same screening criteria, income requirements, credit score minimums, background check policies to every single applicant in the same way.
Why is consistency so crucial?
To avoid any claims or appearance of discrimination. If you bend the rules for one person but not another, even with good intentions, it could open you up to legal trouble. Define your criteria up front, apply them uniformly, and document your process. And make sure your criteria are legal in your specific city and state. Know the local tenant laws.
Showing the property itself is also part of this process, isn't it? You get a feel for the applicants then, too.
It absolutely is. When you schedule showings, always confirm the appointment beforehand. Make sure the unit or room being shown and any shared common areas they'll see are clean, tidy, and presentable. First impressions matter. If you have existing tenants or roommates living there, always give them proper notice before a showing and be respectful of their space and privacy. During the showing, point out the positive features, good natural light, closet space, recent updates, but also be prepared to answer questions honestly, even about potential downsides.
Should you do individual showings or like an open house?
That's kind of personal preference. Individual showings give you more one-on-one time to talk with applicants and get a feel for them. Group showings, like an open house format, can be more efficient if you expect a lot of interest, but maybe feel a bit more chaotic. Either can work. But pay attention during the showing. Are the applicants on time? Do they seem respectful of the property? Do they ask reasonable questions? It's another chance to gather information.
And just dealing with all the inquiries, the phone calls, and emails requires clear communication, too.
Definitely. It helps to standardize your answers to the most common questions you'll get about rent amount, lease terms, pet policy, utilities, etc. Have clear, consistent answers ready. It saves time and avoids misunderstandings. And again, pay attention to how people communicate with you during these initial inquiries. Sometimes their tone or the types of questions they ask can give you early clues, positive or negative, about what kind of tenant they might be.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about the reality of living there, especially if you're house hacking by renting rooms in a single-family home, or maybe in a duplex where you share walls or a yard. This is really the core of the house hacking lifestyle adjustment.
It absolutely is. And this is where that golden rule the source mentions becomes so incredibly important. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or, more simply, treat your tenants the way you would want to be treated if the roles were reversed.
Except if you're roommates, essentially.
Exactly. If you're renting out rooms in the house you live in, you are, for all intents and purposes, living with your tenants. You need to be a good resident yourself.
Yeah.
Keep the shared common areas, kitchen, living room, bathrooms clean and tidy. Don't be the messy one.
Right. Lead by example.
Precisely. Be really clear and communicate openly, ideally before they even move in, about house rules. Things like guests, how many, how often overnight stays, noise levels and quiet hours, shared responsibilities, if any, for cleaning or taking out trash.
Should those rules be in writing?
It's highly recommended. Put those key house rules into a written agreement or an addendum to the lease. Having it clearly spelled out up front prevents so many potential conflicts down the road that arise from unspoken assumptions. Being respectful of each other's space, privacy, and schedules is just fundamental to making a shared living situation harmonious when you're both owner-landlord and resident roommate.
And if it's a multi-unit, like a duplex, more separation but still close?
Yeah, in a multi-unit with separate entrances, it's less about being roommates and more about being a good, responsive landlord and probably a good neighbor too, especially if you share walls or yard space. Respond promptly to their legitimate requests, maintain the property well, and respect their privacy in their own unit.
Okay, what about handling repairs and maintenance? Who's responsible and how should you budget for that?
As the owner and landlord, the ultimate responsibility for maintaining the property and handling repairs falls on you. Now, how you handle them can vary.
Can you do repairs yourself?
If you're handy, and the repair is relatively minor and within your skill set, like fixing a leaky faucet, patching a small hole in drywall, maybe changing a light fixture, doing it yourself, can definitely save money. The source suggests kind of weighing the cost. Calculate how much it would cost to hire a pro versus the value of your own time based on your hourly wage or what else you could be doing. Sometimes, even for small tasks, it might be cheaper or more efficient overall to just hire someone, freeing up your time.
And for bigger things?
For larger, more complex issues, major plumbing problems, electrical work, HVAC system failures, roof replacements, or anything that requires a professional license or permits, it's almost always best and often legally required to hire qualified licensed professionals. Don't try to DIY major electrical work if you don't know what you're doing.
Good advice. How do you budget for this stuff?
You must budget for maintenance and repairs proactively. Remember those reserves we talked about? That's partly what they're for. A common rule of thumb is to budget and set aside about 1% of the property's purchase price each year specifically for maintenance. Another way is to budget a certain dollar amount per unit per month, maybe $50, $100 per unit depending on the age and condition, and build up that reserve fund over time. And crucially, respond to tenant repair requests reasonably promptly. Delaying necessary repairs can sometimes lead to bigger, more expensive problems down the road, and it definitely doesn't help your tenant relationship.
Right. Throughout all of this, collecting rent, paying the mortgage, handling repairs, keeping meticulous track of the finances sounds absolutely critical.
Oh, it's vital. You absolutely have to treat your house hack like a small business, even if it's just renting out a room. The source likens it to a sports team tracking the score you need to know if you're winning financially.
Why is tracking so important?
Well, several reasons. First, it allows you to accurately assess the performance of your investment. Is it actually cash flowing the way you projected? Are your expenses higher than expected in certain categories? Second, it helps you identify areas where you might be able to improve efficiency or cut costs. Third, it is absolutely essential for tax reporting. You need detailed records of all rental income received and all deductible expenses paid. Fourth, good tracking helps you budget effectively for those reserves and plan for future capital expenditures, like knowing you'll probably need a new roof in 5 years.
So how should someone actually set up their finances to track everything properly for a house hack?
The core recommendation, and it's a really good one, is to open a dedicated bank account specifically for the property, a separate checking account just for the house hack.
Okay, separate account.
Yes. Deposit all the rental income you receive directly into that account and pay all property-related expenses directly from that account. Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance premiums, repair costs, utilities if you pay them. Keep your personal finances completely separate. Don't commingle funds.
Why is separation so key?
It makes tracking, analysis, and tax preparation infinitely easier and cleaner. There's no confusion about what was a personal expense versus a property expense.
And how do you actually track the categories?
Using accounting software is highly recommended. Something like QuickBooks, Self-Employed, Xero, or even just a very detailed spreadsheet if you're disciplined. You need to categorize every transaction, rent income here, repair expense there, insurance payment here. This allows you to easily run reports and see exactly where the money is coming from and where it's going.
Does the source say you need an LLC, formal business structure?
It notes that forming an LLC isn't strictly required for your first house hack, according to one perspective. Many people do their first one just in their personal name. However, regardless of whether you have an LLC or not, diligently tracking all your income and especially all your deductible expenses is absolutely essential for maximizing your tax benefits. You need those records come tax time. Consulting with a CPA familiar with real estate is always a good idea too.
Okay. One last practical question, especially for the shared living situations. Should you actually tell your tenants that you're the owner, the landlord, or pretend to be just a property manager?
That's a great question, and the answer kind of depends on your comfort level and the specific property type.
How so?
If you're in, say, a fourplex and you live in one unit and rarely interact with the tenants in the other units beyond collecting rent or handling maintenance requests, you could potentially present yourself simply as the property manager. Some people prefer that distance.
But if you're sharing a kitchen?
Right. If you're renting out rooms in your own home, sharing common spaces, they're almost certainly going to figure out pretty quickly that you're the owner. Trying to hide it can feel awkward or even breed distrust if they find out later you weren't upfront.
So honesty is the best policy there.
The source generally suggests that, yes, while it's ultimately a personal decision based on your comfort, being truthful about your role as the owner-landlord in a shared living house hack can actually help build trust and set clearer expectations from the beginning. Transparency, combined with maintaining professional boundaries and sticking to that golden rule of treating them respectfully, as you expect them to treat you and the property, often leads to a better, more functional landlord-tenant dynamic, especially when you're essentially roommates.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a huge amount of ground today. Seriously. Everything from the whole mindset shift needed for this, down to the absolute nitty-gritty details of financing, finding properties, analyzing those deals, making offers, and then actually managing the living situation day to day.
And that's really because house hacking isn't just some simple trick. It's a deliberate, actionable strategy. It offers a very real, tangible path towards financial independence for a lot of people by directly attacking their biggest expense and turning that liability into an income-generating asset. And success isn't really about luck. It's about taking those proactive steps we talked about, doing the research, getting comfortable with the numbers and the analysis, building that small but focused team, really mastering the financing options available to you, being incredibly meticulous about choosing who you bring into your property as tenants, and then diligently tracking your financial performance like a hawk.
It definitely requires that upfront commitment to taking the alternate road, as the source called it, embracing a potentially more frugal, less conventional lifestyle than your peers, at least initially.
It does require that mindset shift, but the potential payoff is just immense. For many Americans, honestly, house hacking is one of the most accessible and powerful strategies available to drastically reduce or even eliminate their largest monthly expense, to build significant equity through owning real estate relatively early, and to create that crucial passive income stream that can dramatically accelerate the journey toward financial freedom. It's a practical strategy that's genuinely within reach for more people than might realize it.
That's a powerful summary. So considering the truly outsized impact that housing costs have on, well, pretty much everyone's financial life, here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to just sit with for a moment. What's one small, actionable step you could take, maybe even today, after hearing this? Maybe it's just pulling up Zillow or Redfin for a neighborhood you like, finding a duplex or a 3-bedroom house, and trying to run a quick back-of-the-napkin rental analysis using an online mortgage calculator and some rent estimates. Just practicing.
Yeah, just get your feet wet with the numbers.
Or maybe it's researching the different types of owner-occupied loans we talked about, FHA, low-down conventional, and seeing what the requirements are in your state. Or perhaps it's even simpler. Just taking a really hard look at your current monthly budget and identifying where freeing up hundreds or even thousands of dollars currently going to housing could actually make a tangible difference in your savings or investment goals. What small step could you take right now to start analyzing your own situation, or to seriously explore if house hacking could be that achievable goal for your future?
Because financial freedom truly can be built. And maybe, just maybe, it starts one house hack at a time.